When I think of domestic violence, it's about control. That's the goal, that's the objective.
Welcome to Shooting Straight with Brad and David. I'm Brad Carline, your Navajo County Attorney.
And I'm David Klaus, your Navajo County Sheriff.
And our guest this week is Roxanne Pergeson, the Navajo County Victim Services Director. Thank you for joining us,
Yeah,
Roxanne.
Thank you for having me.
And this month of October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And is that type of cases that you and Victim Services see quite a bit of?
Yes, we do. Actually, this is why October is so important to us, is because domestic violence actually tends to be our largest crime group of victims that we serve within the Navajo County Victim Services Department.
How many victims a year does the Victim Services assist?
So I just ran those numbers this morning because I wanted to make sure that we were accurate, but between 1,200 and 1,500 a year. This year it's over 1,500, 1,581 a year from today.
And of that number, over 1,500, about what percentage are domestic violence victims?
So 30% of all of the victims that we serve are domestic violence victims. What's important to know about that number, though, is we actually record and help all victims of crime. So we count groups or crimes based off of 18 different types of crimes. That can include theft, burglary, assault, homicide cases, rape, child abuse. But domestic violence, out of 1,500 victims, just a roundabout figure, 431 of those were DV victims, with my next highest group was theft victims, and we were at 193 there. So they're by far over a quarter of the victims that we see out of 1,500 victims a year.
Almost a third.
Yes.
David, do you see the same thing on your law enforcement side?
Yeah, as Roxanne was giving those statistics, I was thinking back to my days in patrol and what our current deputies people crimes I would say for sure would be these domestic violence types of incidents that you would see. And I was kind of a little surprised there. I think property crimes may outweigh that, but those are numbers that are seeking services from you, right? Not total cases you saw.
Yes, correct. Yeah. That I'm glad that you clarified that. But those are the active victims seeking resources, seeking services, whatever those might be from Victim Services Department.
Yeah.
Yes. Where your burglaries may not want that except their property back.
Yeah. I think they probably statistically have more calls that we handle with a property crime, but when it involves somebody and fear and safety and looking for resources of protection and feeling that they can continue to live their lives, it'd definitely be these crimes that occur in their home that have the greatest concern for you.
And how do you define a victim of a domestic violence crime?
So there's a legal statute, but I don't know that necessarily applies to all of the victims that we see, because legally there's a statute that qualifies somebody as a domestic violence victim. There is usually some type of assault, disorderly conduct, threatening, intimidating, and then there needs to be some type of relationship between the two parties where they have resided together. But so that is important to know, because domestic violence isn't only about intimate partner violence. Mm-hmm. Domestic violence can exist between parents. We've helped mothers of sons, or even brothers and sisters within a home. So dating violence can be domestic violence, and sometimes it can exist even beyond those types of factors. But most commonly what we do see, and the ones that we tend to be a little bit more worried about, are the ones involving intimate partner violence, where two people are either dating or in a married relationship.
Why are you more concerned about that than the other type of relationships that could be classified as a domestic relationship?
Well, statistically speaking, there's just a higher likelihood that if domestic violence exists within that relationship, it could result in a fatality. And that is something that's very scary. There's a lot of investigation and research and a lot of information out there about domestic violence and the causes of that and the correlations between just abuse as it exists within a relationship and then those that can result in a fatality, which we do see in Navajo County, unfortunately.
And David, I see in the media that oftentimes when there is a incident where an officer gets hurt, quite often seems to be related to domestic violence. Is there a higher likelihood of harm to officers in those situations?
Yeah, you look nationwide, or you look at a lot of these line of duty deaths from any sort of peace officer across the country. You can see a lot of them are responding to domestic violence. Here in our county, if you look at some of the line of duty deaths, you've seen some that are outside that category, but you're definitely on a heightened awareness because of if they're willing to, if they're going to inflict harm on a loved one or a child or anybody that they've had a relationship with, they often look at us as somebody that's entering into their space, and now all of a sudden we pose a threat to them that they can't continue their lifestyle, and so we become a target. They say a peace officer responding, and you just see the volatile situations really rise in those types of responses, and we train that way. We often respond that way, and we always respond two per call to those, just because of those national statistics of the more likelihood of encountering a very dangerous situation.
Dealing with victims of domestic violence, is it always physical? Are there other type of violence, and is it also control? Is that an issue that underlies a lot of domestic violence cases?
Yes, this is my favorite thing to try to explain to people about domestic violence, because I think we associate it in our minds as an assault that has to occur within two people who are in a relationship. But that's not, in my mind, what DV is at all. When I think of domestic violence, it's about control. That's the goal. That's the objective. It's when one person tries to assert their authority, their power, their control over another individual. And then they're using these tools, assault being one of those, but financial manipulation, threatening and intimidating, isolation. These are all different types of tools that an abuser will use. And the goal is to create or gain power over another individual. So when you see somebody who might be in a really extreme jealousy is one, that is a red flag to me, even in my personal life when I'm observing people's relationships, and I know that this is my job, but you can't help but do it. Extreme jealousy or using that as a way to manipulate somebody's behavior, to getting them to do what you need them to do or want you to do, that's a very strong risk factor in my mind. So these are all of the tools encompassing, and they can happen in a silo, in a circle, and then they can escalate to assault and even beyond. And what Sheriff Klaus was talking about before is very true, because there's a heightened sense of emotions involved in these intimate partner relationships. I tell people, imagine your healthy relationship, and even on its worst day, like no relationship is perfect. And so we have, but imagine that person then being a person who you think might hit you or you think might abuse you. And then we ask, why do they stay? Well, is it easier to be this person's friend or their enemy? Because the second they leave, that's exactly what's going to happen.
And isn't when they leave the heightened risk of actual death in cases?
Yes. So as an advocate, we're trained that the 72-hour period after a victim leaves is the most lethal and fatal time for a victim. So we offer crisis response services, and the goal or objective there is to make sure we are providing them the resources, intervening, getting them to safety, to allow at least that tiny bit of a cooling off period. That doesn't mean it can't happen weeks later, or hopefully the person's put in custody, but if they're released, there's all of these factors that have to be considered to keep this person safe, and they have to start asserting and putting their authority back into that relationship. Then that only intensifies the abuser's actions toward that individual.
And then while you provide services, we have 2 domestic violence shelter groups in the county. I assume you work closely with them on these type of cases?
Yes, so actually I run the local domestic violence sexual assault coalition, and I've been so grateful that I've had partnerships within a lot of the organizations in Navajo County that do support victims of domestic violence. We have 2 shelters that it's very important for people to know exist. We have the White Mountain Safehouse, which is here in Sholo in this area, and then there's Alice's Place that's in Winslow. And even if you don't need shelter services, you can go to them as a victim of domestic violence or even a family member just to get support, financial support, transportation. We can relocate people out of state, which is a lot of times necessary depending on the situation.
And it may surprise some people, but in Navajo County, we have a domestic violence fatality review board that examines at least one DV death every year to see how we can respond better in those situations. Are you on that still, David?
Yeah, I mean, my office, I have representatives that serve on there, and you pointed out, some may find that surprising. I still remember the very first call that I went to that involved domestic. It was a murder-suicide, where
I think I know which one you're talking about.
And then there was a child that was left, and that's when I understood the value that Roxanne and her team, they bring. I remember being on the scene there, and then we had this child. What do we do with? Of course, we have to Child Protective Services, they're called, but it was Roxanne and her team that came and really handled that emotional and devastating and tragic situation.
It was middle of the night.
Yeah.
Too. It was hard to get him out. So we have a whole month to bring to people's attention domestic violence. What are we doing in Navajo County to help educate people about domestic violence, where they can go for help and resources, what is happening here and across the state, if there's other resources that you know of?
So there are a lot of activities. People within the victim services realm take Domestic Violence Awareness Month very seriously. Even in years past, I remember it was, we're competing with Breast Cancer Awareness Month, which has always been a hit, but it's a prime example of why these awareness months are so important. Think about how wearing pink or the bracelets really contributed to an overall discussion about breast cancer, and how as a result people are following up, getting mammograms, doing early prevention work, blood draws, and all of that stuff in order to help prevent or alleviate those types of cancerous deaths. Same focus needs to be on domestic violence because it can be prevented, but we have to start by first having a conversation and educating our whole entire community about it. They need to know about resources that are available. They need to know about healthy relationships. They need to be able to do early intervention when they witness, like somebody like me who might have a friend where I'm all of a sudden like this, there's something not right here. What you observe as jealousy and admiration is really something that could be more dangerous. Not to say that they're in a bad situation right there, but you need to think a little bit closely and start giving them the facts. A lot of this stuff if we keep pushing it and having awareness events, it can go into creating a community conversation that will hopefully, at a minimum, decrease these types of crimes.
So is the Navajo County Victim Services Department doing any special event this month?
We are. So the 21st of October, we're going to be holding a domestic violence awareness and fundraising event at the Navajo County the fairgrounds. And the purpose of it really is to raise awareness, but we do have a crisis fund that we fundraise for. And so we're going to be holding a cornhole tournament. And there's going to be information online you can visit Brad's Facebook page, and all of our information about that will be listed there. And the cornhole tournament, the proceeds after the winnings go out, all go to our crisis fund that we utilize to put victims in hotel rooms and different things like that. In addition to that, we are going to have vendors. We'll have kids activities. We're going to have DJ and music and food and informational booths. And then we'll have a huge memorial in the evening where we will really make this whole situation that is a lot of fun, brings people out, but then bring it back to what our focus is recognizing this month and victims and survivors of domestic violence.
Are there also a pie contest and salsa contest?
Yes, there will be. A pie contest, a pie baking contest, and a salsa contest. And we're looking for judges. or entries.
Yeah.
I'll get my wife to enter
Yeah.
one of her apple pies. But, is there anything else that you want to close out and let the people know about for Domestic Violence and Domestic Violence Awareness Month?
Just that there are a ton of resources available within our community. I don't think people are aware of that. There is help if people need it, even if they just need to call us and get information. If they need to bring people over and have us talk to somebody that they think might be in danger. And not just our department, but our department can kind of be the hub because we work with all types of crime for resources. So we will make sure during the month of October that Brad's Facebook page always has a lot of information about local resources, all of the activities going on throughout the state. Anybody who's helping with this, we get a lot of sponsorships that we're very grateful for, and all of that stuff will be on your Facebook page.
Well, we ran out of time. Thank you. And thank you for joining us this month on Shooting Straight with Brad and David. And on your screen will be some numbers if you need help and you're in a domestic violence situation that you can contact. And we'll look forward to talking to you again next month.